Hello and welcome to this tutorial, and in this tutorial we'll be continuing our previous database application. So once we are done with this product.java class, the next thing which we do is that we create a new class. But before creating a new class, one more thing which we need to do is that we need to create a default constructor, actually one more empty constructor over here. So in order to do that, we type public products and we are going to leave it as an empty constructor. So now once we are done adding the empty constructor, the next thing which we do is that we create a new class in Java. So in order to add a new class, you know the usual procedure. So simply right click on this folder, go to new and select Java class, and we are going to name it as my database handler, as it is going to create a database for us and we are going to write in some queries related to database. So we type in my DB handler, then click OK. And as you could see, this is our class which is called as the MyDB handler. Now then we need to make this class extend the SQLite open helper. So in order to do that, we type extends SQLite open helper. So now once this is done, as you could see, it is showing us an error that it should implement a method. So basically we are going to add a constructor and also we are going to override some methods into it, but before that we need to create some variables. So whenever we are going to create a database, as if you have some knowledge of SQL, you might know that every database needs to have a version and every database has some version name. Then we have the table, and inside the table we have the table name and the column ID and everything like that. So basically we are going to create a variable to define each of those previously before directly creating a database. So now let's go ahead and create some variables. So the first variable we are going to create is going to be the database version, and this is basically used to identify the database uniquely, so that whenever you have some changes to your database, this version is going to change. So we type private static final int. As this is the database version, we are going to store it as an integer value. Then we type database underscore version, and then we type it equal to 1, as this is going to be our first version. Now the next variable which we are going to add is the database name. So again we copy the same declaration and we just replace the integer by a string, as we need to save the database name. So we type database underscore name, and let's say the name of our database is products.db. So we type products.db, and the next thing which we need to do is that we need to define the table products. So we type public static final string, and we name this variable as table underscore products, and we assign this a value of products. Then we copy this initial declaration, so we simply copy this, paste it over here, and create one more variable which is called as the column ID, so as to define the column separately. So we type column underscore ID. So we specify the column ID as underscore ID, and now we again paste this initial declaration, and then we give a value to the variable which is called as the column product name. So we type column underscore product name, and we are going to assign a value to this as product name. So once we have everything set up, the next thing which we do is that we add a constructor. So we press Alt insert, select a constructor, and we are going to add in the first constructor right here. So click OK, and it is going to add up a constructor for us. Now the next thing which we need to do is that we need to add an Oncreate. So in order to add Oncreate, again we use code completion. We select the override methods, and the method which we want to use is the Oncreate as well as the onUpgrade. So this is the Oncreate method right here. So we select the Oncreate method, and we also select the onUpgrade method which is present right here. So we select these two methods to override. Then we simply click OK, and the two methods are going to be added to our code. So now the next thing which we need to do is that we need to go into this constructor and we need to set a few things. So inside the super, the context is going to remain as it is, and instead of this name right here, we are going to specify the database name. So this is the database name which we have created right here. So we simply copy it and paste it over here. So this value is eventually going to get replaced by this products.db. Now the next thing which we need to do is that we need to keep the factory as it is, and just we need to replace this version. So instead of this version right here, we could delete it and use this variable which is called as the database version and paste it over here. So basically this my database handler constructor is used in order to set up the database for you. So this code is going to create a new database for us. Now the next thing which we need to do is that we need to create a table inside a database. So a basic structure of a database is that you have the database on the top level. Now inside the database you have multiple tables, and inside the table you are going to have a certain set of rows which are eventually going to store the data for you. So now once this is done, the next thing which we need to do is that we need to execute a query for creating a table. So in order to do that, we simply go here and we type in the query in order to create a table. So we type string, as a query is going to be stored in a string, we type string, then we use the variable query so as to store the query, and we could later execute it. So we type string query equals, and in double quotes we type in create table, and it is going to create the table for us. So we type string query equals create table, and the name of our table is going to be this thing right here, which is called as the table products variable. So inside two plus signs we type in this name right here. So we simply copy it and we paste it over here, and then as we want to add a bracket, we again specify the bracket or the opening bracket in between these two double quotes. Then we type in the bracket, then again we need to specify the column ID. So again we give two plus signs, and between these plus signs we type in the column ID, which is nothing but this. So we copy it again, go inside here and paste it. Now as this column ID is going to be the primary key, we need to declare it as a primary key. So if you have worked previously with SQL, you might know what's happening over here. So basically we are going to create a query and then we are going to execute it. So this query right here is for the table creation. So basically we are trying to create a table, and we are passing it, and we are passing multiple fields inside it. So now for the column ID, it should be the primary key. So after the plus sign in double quotes we specify integer primary key, and this should be auto increment, and after auto increment we have a comma, then again we give two plus signs, and in these plus signs we are going to type in the column product name. So we simply select this, copy it, go inside here and just paste it. So we have added the product name. So you could also just shift it to the left if you want. So now after the column product name, the next thing which we need to do is that we need to specify the type of this column product name. So we type in text over here, then again we give two plus signs, and this plus signs we are going to end the statement by using a closing bracket. So we add a closing bracket here, and this is a bit tricky, and that is because even if you miss a single symbol right here, it is going to cause a syntax error. So make sure that you type it correctly, and we give a semicolon right after this, and we delete this plus sign right over here. So as you could see, this is the basic query which is used. So if you are writing this query in simple SQL, it would be create table products, and column ID was declared as a primary key which is going to increment automatically, and column product name which is of the type text. And make sure that you type the query the exact same, and the reason is that if you miss something in between, you are going to face an error when you are trying to run this application on the emulator. So once this is done, the next thing which we do is that we execute the query. So to execute the query we type db.execute SQL or execsql, which stands for execute SQL, and then we specify the query which we have just created. So we type in query inside of it. So once this is done, it is going to execute this query, and what this query does is that it is going to create a table, and the table name of this table is going to be products or table products, and it is going to have two parameters. The first parameter is going to be the column ID, which is automatically going to increment, and it is the primary key. And the next field which we are going to add is the column product name, which is the name which we are going to add by typing over here. So that's it for this tutorial, and in the next tutorial we'll be writing the query for adding some content into the table. So thank you very much for watching this tutorial, and I'll see you guys in the next tutorial. Thank you.